and the Republican and Trump is gaining more of those black votes in those heavily urban districts than he did in 2020.
Leading into
we've got a guest.
Go on then.
Yeah, so we can speak to Billy Boozer, who is the former Chief Product Officer at Truth Social. That's the platform set up by Donald Trump after he was kicked off Twitter. He's now back on X, Donald Trump. I don't know about Billy. But
thanks for having me today.
Good evening. Yeah, nice to talk to you. Well, things are looking pretty good for Donald Trump at the moment.
Yeah, I think everything that we're seeing is really positive. I mean, I think we all want to remain cautiously optimistic. 2020 was a shock to the system for all conservatives, and I think what we're seeing today is a response to that. I think we're seeing a response to bringing back constitutional values into the American cultural spectrum, and I'm just really thankful that there's an opportunity now to bring back strong leadership in our country.
Do you recognize the result of 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I think that 2020 was pretty nuanced in what happened there. I think that we saw a pushback against what our institutions look like. And I think it wasn't strictly about our elections, but it was also about the battle for what we perceive as core values in our country, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. And so I think, while I think we'd all like to have a clear-cut answer about 2020, I think it's still one of those scenarios that we'll look back on in the future and still have some questions about.
So is your answer yes or no?
I'd say yes. I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, I think that as long as he wins this time, I don't know if it really matters what happened in 2020.
Right. I mean, I guess, the other thing that there's been a lot of conversation. We've been having a conversation about the demographics, the Joe Rogan listeners and the other demographics that Donald Trump has sort of tried to, lure towards himself, the African-American vote, the Latino vote. We're starting to see some of that now playing out.
Yeah, I think we see an age down in the vote as well. I think that young men decided that the future that they were seeing under the current administration wasn't the future that they wanted to see. They wanted to see a future where there wasn't ambiguity between men and women, that freedom of speech was still a core value, that they had the opportunity to protect the future family that they have. And so I think what you're going to see is a pretty big rebuke of the wokeism that existed in this administration, and a pendulum swing back to core American values.
But this is, a man who has been impeached twice. He's facing criminal trials. As we've just been discussing, he has refused to accept the result of the last election. Isn't it extraordinary that he's on the verge, potentially, of winning this one?
I mean, I think what's extraordinary about this is that what you're seeing is the American people recognizing that the core institutions that we have voted in and we have supported throughout history have changed. And we've seen lawfare happen in our political system that seems to be disproportionate on one side. And in that way, I think that what we're seeing right now in this election is a pushback against these core institutions that seem to have been pretty much rife with corruption. And I'm really excited to see what happens with Elon, him getting into politics and getting involved. He's one of the most prolific figures in our whole world right now. He understands how to land rockets by catching them in midair. And I think that those kind of things are the types of people that we want involved in our institutions moving forward, because those people will drive innovation and drive progress within our economy.
Do you think he'll give Elon Musk a job?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Department of what is this government efficiency, Doge. I think it's an interesting idea. I think he's already shown that he can take an organization and whittle it down to its component parts that make it more efficient. And in those ways, I think that there's an opportunity to do the same thing with our government. Like, I think conservatives really would love to see our government shrink a bit. I don't think we should be so heavily dependent within our GDP on what government spending is like. I'd love to see our economic growth be centralized around the private industry in our country. And I think Elon and people like that have put a spotlight on what American dynamism looks like in the future. And I think it paints a picture of progress and a picture of a future that a lot of us would love to buy into.
Can I ask about Robert Kennedy and Donald Trump saying that he was going to put him over maybe HHS, over Health and Human Services? Can you speak a little bit to that and his positions on vaccines and that sort of thing?
Well, I think, again, this is another one of those things that was a symptom of what we saw within the COVID era, which was a lot of information that came out that over time bared truth. Basically, that we saw that things that were being said were disinformation in the past are now bearing out to being true in the future. And so what we'd like to see is actual transparency within our government. And I think that's what is actually endearing about Donald Trump. He has authenticity in the way he speaks to people. Him and RFK Jr. both seem to speak at the level of every American and want to be involved with them. JD Vance does the exact same thing.
Are you concerned that RFK wants to remove fluoride from public water systems? I mean, don't you have some concerns about these extreme positions?
Well, I think that our government is an amazing structure where there are checks and balances. And so while he may propose these ideas, and I think that that's the most important part, is that we communicate about these ideas, we socialize these ideas, we test these ideas with the scientific process. But I think no matter what, if we can't have these conversations about what is good and what is bad and what is healthy and what is unhealthy for our country, then I think that we're moving towards a very dark future. And I think what this election is showing right now is that we're moving towards a brighter future where ideas are tested in sunlight as opposed to tested in dark rooms where people dictate what the future looks like for Americans.
Right, Billy, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. And we leave it there because Sky News is ready to make a major state projection. And there it is. Sky News is projecting that Donald Trump has won the state of North Carolina, a crucial swing state